Good evening. Welcome to the first recorded series of the Forward Workshop, a group of workshops that were put together by the Manhattan SDA Church. We are in unprecedented times, as everyone keeps saying, and we wanted to get ourselves out of that. So we started this series as a way to come out of the current situation with a little more knowledge. And the first kind of topic that we're covering today is budgeting. Budgeting and personal finance. My name is Christina, and I have the first half of our presentation. So here we have our agenda. It's a quick run through. We'll go through all of these topics, but just a high level review before we get there. So the first kind of big question, what is a budget? Budget is one of those words that's kind of scary, kind of ominous. It makes you think of spreadsheets, maybe a Charles Dickens type accountant checking off lines in a ledger. But the point of this session, if you come away with anything, is that budgets don't have to be scary. They actually exist as a plan, and it's really helpful to think of a budget as a plan. You know where you want to go, a budget's going to get you there. So we don't have to look at budgets as something that are restrictive, that are controlling things that we can't do. Rather, budgets are things that get us towards our goals. They help us to accomplish things that we have prioritized. So everyone can have budgets. Personal budgets are what we're going to focus on today, so a budget that you and I would assemble, but a company can have a budget, a university can have a budget, any organization or entity can have one, but the type of budget that we'll focus on today is personal. It's something that we would do to kind of make sure that our homes, our lives, our finances are in order. No. So why is budget important? So there are lots of different kind of reasons behind budgeting. We have several on the screen, but what helped me most understand the importance of budgeting is when a friend of mine actually told me that I already had a budget. When I said I definitely do not, she explained to me that a budget is actually just a set of priorities. So the way you spend money now already shows the existence of a budget. You just don't have it outlined. So when we actually start putting down a budget, when we start allocating our resources and our money and our time towards goals, then we can actually move from kind of accidental spending to more intentional spending. So the first reason a budget's important is it helps you keep your eye on the prize. We might have vague goals that we know we want to achieve in the next 5, 10, 15, 30 years, but having a budget will give us really practical, attainable steps to get there. Budgets also help you ensure that you don't spend money that you don't have. Nobody loves the feeling of checking their bank account before they go to the grocery store or wanting to buy something fun and knowing you don't have it in your bank account. Having a budget doesn't mean that you don't get to have fun things. It means that you have the proper resources allocated towards spending money the way you want it to. Last thing a budget does is it helps to shed light on bad spending habits. So as I said, everyone has priorities already. Everyone already has a way in which you're spending money, and someone's bad spending habits doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing that you're spending money towards. Having a bad spending habit means that your priorities are not aligned with the actual bank account. The way that you're spending money isn't indicative of the goals that you have. So having a budget helps us make sure that we're spending money the way we want to spend our money, that all of our resources are going towards fulfilling our goals, which is our next kind of segue. So in our mind's eye, if it wasn't a pandemic, if it wasn't winter, we're pretending we're on a road trip. If we were to drive from New York to Disneyland in Florida, somewhere in South Carolina, our car breaks down. We know where we want to go. We know the end goal of Disney World, but we don't know how to get there. We just are stranded. A budget is the roadmap. A budget is Siri, or whatever the Android equivalent of Siri is, or Waze, or a physical roadmap to get you from where you currently are, maybe feeling overwhelmed by the obstacles, maybe feeling stranded. A budget will get you to where you want to be ultimately. So goals are the place that we want to be as opposed to where we currently are. So let's get into the different types of goals. There are different types of financial goals, and we've categorized them here into a couple different ways. So first of all, savings. Savings is a compilation of money. Maybe it's for a nice end goal of sending your kids to college. Maybe it's making sure you can retire. Maybe it's making sure you can buy a house or a car one day, one big purchase. Either way, these types of goals are things that we'd save and then spend towards. The kind of opposite of the savings financial goal is a payoff of debt kind of goal. So you've actually already acquired the debt and you need to get out of this hole. So we have a financial goal of recovering that ground. And the last kind of financial goal we give in this miscellaneous category. So this is if you have updating or creating your will, making sure that you are insured should something unfortunate happen. All of these fall under different types of financial goals, and all of these are things that we can work towards, that we can allocate our budget towards to make sure that our spending is in alignment with these priorities. So these types, kind of further breaking down these goals that we just covered, allocations. We have some time buckets here just to help you envision that kind of goals and the kind of financial savings you can have in the next period of time. So maybe buying a house is something that seems super daunting, like maybe that's 15 years in the future, 30 years in the future, whatever. Instead of trying to capture a long-term goal, we can go more towards the short-term goals. We can go and allocate our resources towards immediate things that will help us in the near future. Having a rainy day fund set up should we need to fall back on that savings. Having a will and our insurance made. Our interim goal within the next 3 to 10 years, knowing that we could be debt-free after that time. It might not happen immediately, but we don't want to put it off and have it be indefinite. We put that into the middle category of interim goal allocation. And then finally, retirement or college savings for your children, something that's kind of in the future, kind of nebulous, but we want to start saving now so that it is easier by the time we get there. So now that we have all of our goals, we've covered the point of a budget, I will now hand it over to my co-presenter who's going to get us to the actual basics and components of building a budget.
Thank you, Christina. So now we're going to present a more hands-on approach of what the budget is. So far we covered the goals, orienting what the financial goals would be, and the theoretical part, but now it's more about the practical part about budget. First, you have to organize how much you earn. You gotta pull a piece of paper and pen. If you're old school, let it be so, but if you are more into being able to control things through the computer, and then a spreadsheet through Excel can be the best tool. So you first have to list your income. As you do that, try to do it as a way that you take the gross amounts. Then we work down into the taxes and deductions towards the IRA or the 401k or any defined benefit plan that you belong to or a profit sharing plan, anything, any deductions, don't touch it yet. First, just list all the gross income that you would have from any venue, say your regular job, or if you do gigs, take those too, but everything is supposed to be general. Gross. Once you list all your sources of income, then you go into the expenses. For the expenses, you have the needs, the wants, and the variable expenses. Of course, the needs are the more important one. The variables, the ones you always have, but the variables, they move, they shift. It can be the credit card. As you pay down the credit card, those expenses, those fees that you pay over, they decrease over time, so those are variable. And it's important that you do as much categorizing on the expenses as possible, because that's where you're gonna come back to in order to do some clawback or do some reduction or in order to position yourself and know where you stand. So doing the expenses, be the most specific as possible. Try not to be so general when you're doing your expenses. This is how it's supposed to end up looking like. You have the income on one side and then you have the expenses on the other side. Of course, expenses is always gonna look like a lot of more things because we're humans. We tend to like to have things and spend. So there's a lot of outgoing capital instead of, it would be better to have an array of income sources longer than the expenses, but it's fine. It's normal, don't fret, it's okay. So what do we have in terms of budget? Let's organize the thoughts. You have three types of budgets for individuals. Corporate budgeting is a whole different animal. We are not going into that, of course, but that would have an array of categories of how to do it and how to tackle it, and it gets to be audited by accounting agencies, etc. But for individuals, you have three types. We're going to start in reverse order. We have the pay yourself, or better called pay thyself first, and then you have the zero sum or zero sum game, and then you have the first one is the envelope. It basically goes depending on how you use it. Basically depends on your income capacity, or how much you see yourself as having disposable income available. And especially the reason for the budget, which is to tackle your goals, achieve your goals, your financial goals. The pay yourself is the most basic one and the easier to do, but it requires you to have a lot of disposable income, because what it entails is that the first thing that you do once you start to sketch your expenses, you pay yourself, you distribute to yourself to several or whatever saving instruments that you might have. You can say a 401k, or you can do the IRA, or if you have a Roth IRA, or if you have an annuity, or if you have a cash value life insurance, or if you have a savings account. First thing you do is you distribute an X amount as you want and please to it. Then you do the expenses. But the first thing you do is just dump the money into these vehicles. And then you use the rest for your expenses, which brings us to the next one, which is a zero sum. Zero sum and the envelope, they look alike, but the main difference is that the zero sum is that the envelope uses physical envelopes. You take size 10 or postcard size envelopes, 5 by 6, and you just put money in it. That's the envelope. The zero sum doesn't have any envelope. You don't do any physical really work here. So the zero sum, you don't do any envelopes, but the money that you have, all your income, and by now, of course, you have listed the categories of all your expenses and your income. So you take everything and you distribute. If you have $100 of income, you distribute those $100 to the zero to every other category in the expenses. So you have zero left in the income. That's zero sum. This is mostly when you don't have a job that pays you in cash. For instance, if you are a cab driver, you get mostly cash. Or if you work in a restaurant, you get a lot of tips, you have a lot of cash. This is mostly the one used is the zero sum, because you mostly these days, you look at the computer online to see your current balance. You don't have all the cash in your hand, which brings us to the first category, which is the envelope. When you have the cash in your hand out of your income, those that have or like to liquidate their account and keep the cash at home and the mattress, etc., then you distribute the variety of envelopes, and then you put the cash in the different envelopes of categories that you have. Some people like to do, for instance, going out as a category, but going out entails taxi costs or cab costs. Entails, if you're driving, you put money aside for tolls or for gas, or for tips at a restaurant or for restaurant expenses. That's going out. So it's better to list everything instead of just general categories, as we said earlier. And usually, it used to be very popular, the envelope, but things got really digital. It lost popularity, and then zero sum came to be the most used one. But the system that you end up taking really is about how comfortable you are with everything, and where do you really stand with your income and with your expenses and with your goals, and also the time that you would use and devote, the effort of the time that you use for these, because the envelope can be time consuming, and more so than the zero sum, because you have all the envelope and then you need the space to put out the envelopes, etc. So it goes to the time. Also, how good or how comfortable you feel with technology. Are you okay with letting, say, a website know all the login information of all your details, personal information, like Mint? It first captures all the login information of all your entities where you have your funds at. And are you okay with that? If you're not okay with that, then you would do mostly either the envelope or do the pay yourself first, which is more basic and less computer or less automatic or automated. So that's how you define what type of budget process you are more leaning to. Basically, to review your time, review your goals. If it is a long-term goal that you're looking at, education, maybe it's better just to keep it digital. And because otherwise the envelopes, if you move from place to place, the envelopes may get shuffled, lost, etc. You forget it. So that brings us to the goals. What goals do you have for creating a budget? From a corporation, a mid-size, a small, medium-sized enterprises or large corporations, to individuals, we all have a goal for creating a budget. It depends on as my co-presenter mentioned earlier, the type of goals that you have, such as the buckets, the midterm, the short-term, midterm, or long-term. Basically here, what I want to say is that if you have debt, clear the debt as soon as possible, especially a debt that bears a lot of interest, such as credit cards or loans. Another entity will not pay you the amount of interest that you would pay on your debt to a credit card loan, to a credit card entity. You might have a 14% or a 21% a credit card interest rate on your debt with a company. It would be very hard for a mutual fund, for an entity, to pay you 20%. So be very ferocious and go for your debt, your large interest-bearing debt as soon as possible, because you will never be paid that type of percentage that you are paying on your money to them. So if you have a large debt, condense, go back, revisit your expenses and cut them back as much as you can to attack that debt that you have. And of course, once you have, say you have reached the goal of saving enough funds, then it's important you look into saving it so that you are gaining percentages, income, growth on it. For that, you will need either a financial professional to do this, or you will go to your bank. That person will help you organize what kind of products, what kind of vehicles, what kind of strategies you would use. The cash that you have accumulated on your, as per the goal of having the budget, that cash would then go into the vehicles that would give you a better strategy depending on the time frame of your goal and the risk that you would bear. And of course, online, listed here, you would have, for instance, NerdWallet. It helps you to create a budget. Good budget, it's the one that is being created for the envelope, digital version of budgeting. You have Mint, which is the bigger panoramic view of your finances to handle and see where the money is going and coming. It creates, is really good at creating the categories and breaking it down in a statistical pie for you to really see where and what is happening. Every dollar is also helping you with budget. You Need a Budget is also more informational based and teaches you more about what, and summarizes about the different types of budget that you can use. The Personal Capital is everything. You get the money, the budget, the management of your monies, and research. It gives you a lot of up-to-date research. Then you have Spendy, which is also about budget information, and Wally, helps you categorize the expenses best. And Acorns. Acorns have a list of savings accounts that can give you better return over, say, e-savings account or the savings account that regular banks offer. And that is that for now. Thanks for your attention. I hope it has been very, very helpful. Don't be afraid of doing a budget. Everybody can do it. 40% of the population in this country does it. The balance don't really do it for several reasons. But if you do go to do a budget, please revisit, please review it, please revise it. As things get accumulated, you have reached a goal, then you have another goal. Then point to that and organize your thoughts and organize the budget and how to achieve to that goal. Thank you.
All right, so I just want to give a huge thanks to Christina and Rodrigo for doing the presentation on budgeting, and I hope you learned a lot from this and have a good takeaway and put into practice what you just heard tonight. Just wanted to quickly rehash what the Forward Workshop is all about. It was birthed in the wake of 2020, and we wanting to affect our community in some way, and what avenue or ways can we do that? And we thought about, things of such as this and many more workshops that we have in the future. Obviously, we would love to do these in person, but we can't given the whole Corona crisis that's happening, but maybe in the future we will. But for now, we'll be uploading a series of workshops online for you to access, and hopefully it impacts your life in a positive way. And we just want to continue to do this and affect change in our community and in our world at large. Thank you and have a good night.